Our cerebral hemispheres are actually connected by tracts. So our corpus callosum is what connects the hemispheres together. And we also have these basal nuclei, which are islands of gray matter in the white matter, and they help modify and refine the instructions on our motor functions. So if we zoom into the cut right here, we can see there's a connection between the left and the right. That's that corpus callosum. But we have all sorts of connections and fibers running through our cerebrum and our central nervous system. So all these parts of our brain are talking to each other all the time. It's one of my biggest pet peeves is when people talk about how they're left-brained or right-brained, and they say, well, I'm more artsy, so I'm left-brained, or I like math, so I'm right-brained. In actuality, the two sides of your brain both do a lot of functions, and they're constantly communicating with each other. It's not that like art is housed in one side of the brain and math is on the other. In fact, it's all connected to each other. You can't say you're left-brained or right-brained. My other pet peeve is when people say that they only use 10% of their brain. If that was true, brain injuries wouldn't be a big deal, right? Because odds are we hit an area we don't use. You use 100% of your brain. So just throw that out there. Okay, let's talk about some deeper brain structures. So we got the diencephalon. Now for these deep brain structures, you don't need to know where they are on a picture of a brain. So I will not ask you that for lecture. You do need to know some of the functions. So our thalamus is the relay center for sensory impulses. It takes the sensory input in and says, oh, your vision, go to the back. Your hearing, go over here. Your smell, you go there. Our hypothalamus is our 4 F's, feeding, flighting, fighting, or fornicating. So all that function happens in our hypothalamus, which is why we call it the autonomic center. It also helps regulate temperature and water, and it houses our limbic system, which regulates our deep animal emotions. And it can also regulate our pituitary gland with hormones. Nearby, we have our mammillary body, which is responsible for our sense of smell, and our epithalamus, which houses our choroid plexuses that make our spinal fluid. Now, the brainstem controls our most vital activities, our deepest activities. The midbrain has areas for ascending and descending impulses, as well as reflex centers. The pons controls breathing. We have a medulla oblongata that regulates our visceral, our gut activity. And then we have a reticular formation, which is thought to be the seat of consciousness, which is why brainstem injuries are the biggest of deals. And so again, information is going to come in up our spinal cord and go to these diencephalon and brainstem structures, and it will then be sent out and radiate to our cerebral cortex. This is showing you those structures again. You don't need to know for lecture where they are, but just in case you're curious, we got the thalamus right below the hypothalamus. Below those are our pituitary gland. Underneath, we have our mammillary body, etc. Finally, we have our cerebellum, and cerebellum aids in timing and balance, so it helps with our coordination. So think about what area of the brain does each of these different functions, and see if you can figure that out based on what we've talked about.